Hello and welcome to Joyful, the podcast that will help you live a more joyful life. I'm your host, Chloe Markham, and it's my mission to help you find more joy every single day. This podcast is a deep dive into ways to reduce your stress, your overwhelm, anxiety, and that voice in your head that tells you you're not good enough, whilst also diving into the methods, philosophies, and protocols that help us live more connected, grounded, and ultimately happier lives. This is about living life on purpose. Without any further ado, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, my friend. Welcome back to the pod. Again, let's just have a little sit down like mates do. Have you got a cup of tea? Are you snuggled in? Maybe you're going for a drive. Maybe you're going for a walk. But I really love this idea that it's you and me catching up. How are you doing? How are you, hand on heart, doing? And take a big breath in and sigh it out. And if you can, maybe you're driving, don't do this if you're driving. But I want you just to bring awareness to the soles of your feet. Maybe you can do this while driving, but you know what I mean. Please be safe. Notice the soles of your feet. Notice your legs, any sensations that you can feel there, and into your hips and your lower back. Notice your mid-back and your upper back. Notice your shoulders and arms, torso, belly and chest. How are you breathing? Can you feel that? And notice your heartbeat, the muscles around your jaw and your face. And as you notice all of these physical things, how are you feeling emotionally? Maybe that's an easier route into noticing how you're doing. I'm going to talk about this emotional stuff in a minute. But I want you just to kind of like allow, right? Just allow. It's all good. You're here, baby. It's all good. I got you. And I hope you're feeling okay. And if you're not, I hope it's okay that you're not feeling okay. If you listen to my last episode, I recorded that in my sister's paper studio. She's a paper sculptor. I'm sure she has a better name for it, but I was surrounded by these beautiful objects, and it was this beautiful space. It was gently raining. There was something really nourishing and nurturing about it. And that was my plan today, to be back there speaking to you, recording our little coffee session, date, whatever we call this. But I am looking after a very sick little French bulldog right now. And it's so funny because this episode is about joy, what it is and how we find it. And I'm coming at you from a very less than perfect sound experience. So you might hear some cars, a little bit of traffic. You might hear some little snuffles from Eva herself, the little sick Frenchie. You can hear her snoring gently right now. But I really wanted to get this episode out because it's important. And it's important when you're having days like I'm having that are completely thrown. You want to throw your teddy out the pram. You want to kick off at the noise of the Asda delivery truck passing the front door. Because come on, I'm trying to record a podcast. Oh my God, don't you know anything? Like, I'm so important. I don't know, it's so fascinating because joy is this idea of when I'm rich, I'll be joyful. I'll have joy when I win this competition, or when I snag my man, or that house, or have a child even. It's always something that happens over there. Yet, I encourage you, and we're going to talk about this in a sec, and I'm going to give you some big actionable steps toward the end of this episode to help you find joy today. But finding it in days like this, in cleaning up puppy sick, she's not a puppy, but a 10-year-old puppy, in being malleable to changes in your schedule that you did not plan for, to upset or struggle or challenge is the real Zen mastery, my friend, you know. So yeah, let's just dive in right here. What the hell is joy? I talk about this so often, joy. I talk about joy so much and how you should feel it more and how life should be about it more, but let's define it. And I think I looked earlier and I'm a little sleep deprived, okay? We've been up since midnight last night, vomiting. So bear with my sleep-addled, PMSing also brain. But yeah, I looked at this definition earlier and it was talking about pleasure, right? A sense of happiness and pleasure. It's kind of an overwhelming sense of happiness and pleasure. And so we kind of deny ourselves that, first of all, don't we? Because we can't be overwhelmingly happy and feeling pleasure all the time because life just ain't like that. I'll get onto that in a sec. But yeah, let's just, I don't know. If you think about a time you were really joyful, and I invite you to do that right now, like a time that you can really remember being joyful, what did that feel like? And there is a true feeling to this. There is an embodiment to this level of happiness, to this pleasure. You know, the pleasure is a very kind of like sensual thing. It's a very bodily feedback thing. We talk about pleasure when we think about sex or eating food, right? Or massages. It's very, you know, it's a very indulgent sensory thing. And of course, we don't feel that all the time. Chloe, like, get a grip. Life isn't sunshine and rainbows. But I want to distill this for a second because joy can be and should be more prevalent in our lives, perhaps in a different way to the way that you're thinking. All right, so if we go with that definition, joy being this very embodied sense of happiness and pleasure, how do we make more happiness and pleasure? And actually, Joe Hudson, he's this high-level performance coach. I love everything he does. He talks about joy being the matriarch of a family of emotions. And this matriarch won't come into a house where her children aren't welcome. So, effectively, that's saying that anger, grief, stress, anxiety, fear, whatever, need to be welcomed and accepted and processed in order for joy, the matriarch of this family of emotions, to be welcomed in. And this is what's fascinating to me because, yes, we think of joy as all these pleasurable things, happy things, you know, but when do we actually sit and think about joy being the processing of hard shit? And Joe also talks about this idea that if you sit with anger, if there is no resistance to anger and you allow it fully, it actually turns into, and the basis of it is joy, and replace anger with anything you want. I think that concept is fascinating because actually joy is our natural state of being. There is no effort required. I think society, the way we live our lives, has built up these barriers to it in the way that we think about it. You know, like we've just kind of spoken about, like pleasure and joy and happiness are these, can you hear Eva? Are these kind of intangible things that only happen when we win at something, when we succeed at something or get something. No one talks about joy being inherent to your life right now in this moment. What are you doing right now? Whether you're sitting back, having a cup of tea, driving, walking, whatever. Can you just take a bit more pleasure in what you're doing? I'm hearing Eva snore. It's really funny. And And there's a sense of like watching your bodily feedback, the sensations, the energies, and taking pleasure from that. Like breath, right? Movement, yoga. And I think it's an intention that we put in. I'm getting ahead of myself. So if we go back to this idea of emotional acceptance, the more resistance we have to these emotions that come up, and let me tell you, like, this is, if we don't put in the work, we end up just flat out resisting the challenges that come our way, resisting sadness and heartbreak and grief and turmoil and stress and all of these things. We resist it because that's not normal. That's not what people exhibit on Instagram. I'm not good enough if I'm going through a period of stress or whatever. But as we resist these things, we're actually hampering our, I suppose, efforts to find joy. We're adding barriers to this joyful progress. And even the kind of idea of progress is fascinating because it isn't a journey. We're already there. We just need to uncover some of the dust that's been layering on top. Like, I know I mentioned in the last episode about my own heartbreak and grief, and came out of a long-term relationship a few years ago, straight into another one. It was very toxic. Both were, really. And leaving that second, briefer relationship completely tore me apart. I didn't want to be alive anymore. And I remember feeling so low. But I was using that time to do the work. I was in therapy. That was really supporting me. I had a big support network around me. And I was using these kind of philosophical tools I talk about a lot to support me. And I was sitting there knowing that the way out of that darkness, probably the darkest I've ever felt in my life, is through it. And this is what that old adage always talks about, isn't it? Like, the way out is through. What does that even mean? It is exactly this, is allowing yourself to be in a place of turmoil. What does it feel like? Be curious about it. Sit with it. Accept it. Sometimes I talk about this in meditation. It's like welcoming these guests that you didn't really plan on having round into your house. Welcoming them. Sure, help yourself to the fridge. Like, go through my book collection. Whatever you want. Just make yourself at home. Oh my God. Like, it's not ideal, but it's fine. You're here. Let's just make the best of it. Rather than, no, pressing the door in their face, trying to keep them out. Resistance is just adding more to this process. And those energies and those hard emotions end up building and building. My yoga teacher, Ian, he talks about it in this way. If you push a beach ball underwater in a pool, what happens to that beach ball? Because over time, it's quite an unsustainable act, right? Holding a beach ball underwater. As soon as you let it go, it's going to burst up and explode. And we're adding pressure to this mix by keeping these emotional guests out of our house, by forcing them to not to keep the door closed on them. The pressure is building because the number of these guests are increasing, the number of people, the strength of people. You know what I'm saying? This analogy, I hope it's working, right? But the pressure in keeping all of this at bay is enormous. I mean, don't judge me, but I'm watching Married at First Sight right now. Australia, I don't know what season it is, like 11 or something crazy. And there's this couple, I forget their name, Timothy and Lucinda. And Lucinda's this wonderful woman. I want to be like her when I grow up. She's so centered and grounded and in touch with emotion. And you can see the joy in her and the way that she relates to people. She's a woman that is able to do the things that we're talking about, this kind of emotional acceptance and moving into joy. There's a huge level of emotional intelligence that this woman is portraying on TV. And the guy that she was married to is the exact opposite. And it's so interesting to see, and who knows, this might all be staged, but seeing him, he's a person that's gone through his whole life, and he's in his 50s maybe, that he has gone his whole life barring entry to these emotions, or for these, you know what I mean? He's not allowing these emotions to come in, because that's a sign of weakness. And there's been so many occasions where he's had a breakdown on this show, if you haven't seen it, where he's finally allowing, and it's just this enormous like upwelling of so many different emotions, and he becomes so overwhelmed by it. Again, it's a TV show, like, you know, who knows how much of this stuff is accurate, but I think that actually is a really great representation of what I'm talking about. What we want to do is reduce the amount of friction. That's the way to joy. But then let's flip that around a second, because we all know those kind of people. I mean, that show Sex Education comes to mind. There was a character in that show, brilliant, and kind of important piece of TV. If you haven't seen it, it's on Netflix, I think. And there's a character in it who, there's a moment, I remember it very clearly, about toxic positivity. And there's a character in it that demonstrates toxic positivity. And there's a moment where it's kind of acknowledged, and she kind of rights the boat of toxic positivity and starts to be more real. Because that doesn't work either. Trying to force yourself into joy is kind of another form of resistance. It's another pressure added in, more friction added into this movement. And we want the least amount of friction possible, right? So trying to force yourself into it without feeling these emotions, without allowing this river to flow, we're just damming it up, and we're not getting to where we want to go. So yeah, the trying is the resistance, and, you know, this assumption that we have to try, or this assumption that it's a hard thing to find, that actually, come on, Chloe, no one's actually joyful. All of this stuff is kind of driving it away, adding friction to this journey, putting pressure up for this journey toward living a joyful life. And I'm here to tell you that it is possible. It's reframing it, and that's what I'm hoping to do in this episode, right? And it can be actually a really scary thing, because this joyful landscape that we can find ourselves in is massive. It's so expansive, and most of us, we end up living safe. You know, like, anxiety becomes our comfort blanket, or fear or stress. We tell ourselves and each other, you know, I'm just an anxious kind of person. I'm just quite an angry kind of person. Fearful, whatever you want to add in, or especially when we're grieving, it's like, or heartbroken, it's like, I'm in heartbreak right now. This is where I live, this is where I am, and it defines us. And actually, if we think about, again, this idea of joy, this embodied feeling of pleasure, suddenly we're not restricted by anything. When we really shift into joy, we're not restricted. It's wide open. And sometimes, for most of us, that's fucking terrifying. You know, because what if that means I quit my job, or leave this relationship, or, you know, move countries? That's a really hardcore thing to think about. These are terrifying realities of us living in this joyful way. And, like, it's unpredictable, isn't it? We don't know what'll happen when the walls of this house come tumbling down, and suddenly the horizon is as big as the sky, you know. But these challenging transitions can come up. Like, for me, a really challenging transition was escaping these relationships, right? It's fucking horrible, and it's hard, and it's life defining. But can I just tell you, in the most positive, brilliant way, the long-term result is the predictable bit of kind of walking out into this plane of living joyfully, right? The long-term result is in line with our focus in life being on joy. I hope this is making sense. And it's a really kind of intangible concept, so hopefully some of this is landing. It lands with me, I don't know, different ways of wording it. It really does just kind of excite me, this process. So it's not about being productive or being skinnier or more beautiful or financially abundant. We're not forcing anything. We're already there. Our focus should be to live these joyful, connected lives where we're able to process the anxiety, the fear, the guilt, any emotion that comes knocking at our door. We welcome it in. We process it. We feel these emotions and we process them. We practice movement. We practice feeling pleasure and joy, even when life is challenging and hard. You, my friend, are already there. We just have to blow off the dust, the layers and layers of pond grime off the top of this joy that is inherent to you being alive as a human being, to uncover it. This is what you are. We need to allow, take a deep breath, enjoy, slow it down, feel, don't multitask, be here with me right this moment. Feel the joy beneath everything. This isn't what you feel. This isn't something that you feel. This is who you are. So that is joy. To wrap it up, I suppose, because that's a lot of stuff. This is about process. You know, processing your emotions and recognizing that joy is inherent. So how do we find it? How do we find it right now? And the question, or the answer really is simple. It's how can you take more pleasure in what you're doing in this moment? Maybe it's breath. Oh my God, take a few deep breaths. Maybe it's colors, shapes, light, smells, tastes, movement. Maybe it's cleaning up your dog's sick. It doesn't matter what it is. And this is inherent to mindfulness, right? This is what mindfulness is. Becoming conscious of what you're doing in this moment, of like the mess surrounding you, the emotions surrounding you, the chaos, the challenge, the struggle, the goodness, the beauty, and finding a bit more pleasure in it. My yoga teacher Ian talks about this idea that there's such a lot of deep love in grief. And I'd say the same thing about joy. There's such a lot of joy in grief. But again, in anger and fear and challenge and anxiety. If we allow it, it takes us to joy. So we're already there, baby. We're already there. Joy is an inherent state of being. So take a breath in. Feel the air on your skin. Feel some warmth, feel some cold, feel something and embrace it. This is joyful living, and I I think it's really important. Because once we find this more joyful way of being, our learning ability improves, our creativity, productivity, relationships. These are all side effects. And like, it's funny, isn't it? When we prioritize productivity, if we're not inherently enjoying that process, we're not going to find joy within that. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, maybe this inspires you to prioritize joy. Because once we do this, everything else will follow. Don't worry about the decisions. What is it? Don't sweat the small stuff. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Joy is the big baba. It's the big one. Who knows what this podcast would have turned out like, this episode, if little Eva wasn't sick today. I hope my brain fog hasn't translated too hard into what I'm talking about here. And I hope you're feeling inspired to practice this joy. When you're next on your yoga mat, when you wake up in the morning, when you journal, let it be a practice in your life. Let it be a practice. And let's end this episode with a good to be alive moment. This is hard because I'm tired and cranky, I think. PMSing, oh my God, having a good day. No, I am. My good to be alive moment right now. Do you know what it is? I've been eating so much of this lately and I'm so pumped that there's loads of it in my fridge. And that is kimchi. I am so in love with it. Thanks to my friend Pippa for introducing me. I eat so much of this shit right now. And it brings a little sparkle and spice to every savoury meal I eat. And I am so pumped that I have loads of it in my fridge and I'm going to eat some with my dinner, whatever that will be, probably fairly soon. So it's exciting. Food, oh my God, food brings me joy. It makes me feel good to be alive. So I encourage you to find your own good to be alive moment right now. Something tiny. People call them glimmers, right? Something wonderful that makes your life worth living. And go and practice the joy. I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening, my friend. I hope you're feeling sparkly and inspired to live a more joyful life. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast, leave me a rating. These things are invaluable to me, and share it with people who need it. This is about inspiring more people to be more connected and lead happier and more joyful lives. Join my inner circle for more inspiration. Learn more at the website theyogarevolution.co.uk and chloemarkham.co.uk. I'll see you in the next episode.